Welcome to Extrasode 3 of the Castle of Spirits podcast, coming to you from www.castleofspirits.com, where we have 4,600 and growing true reader and listener submitted ghost stories.
That's right.
Going strong for 25 years.
Yeah, this is our 26th year, isn't it, that we just started?
Well, we say our. The website was not founded by us, but is now bestowed upon us, and
Yes.
we are the proud Ghostkeepers.
That's right. And Vince, what are we doing for the fine folks today?
In every Extrasode, we endeavor to bring you some really awesome ghost stories that we have found on the website.
Hand-picked, fresh for you.
And this week's Extrasode episode features 3 brand new submissions for the month of February 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And Jane, I believe that you have a story for us.
I do. I will start us off. I will be reading a story. Like Vince said, these are all submitted for this month. And this one is called The Haunting of Sara. And it was submitted by Abby in Boston, Massachusetts, February 2023. When I was in my 20s, I briefly dated a girl named Sarah. My friends jokingly told me she was out of my league, and in a lot of ways, they were right. Sarah was beautiful. I'm not. Oh, Abby, don't be so hard on yourself. She had supermodel looks, the kind of girl you always expected to have a boyfriend or girlfriend. When I gathered the nerve to ask her out, she said yes. I was shocked. But soon I discovered there was something terrifying about her. The first incident happened about 2 months after we started dating. It was also the first night I ever spent the night at her place. Usually she would stay over at my apartment. Even though it wasn't as nice as hers and much farther from the nightlife district, she always insisted on us going there instead. But one night I got too drunk to drive, and so we walked the short distance to her place. I mean, that's just responsible.
Very smart. Very smart. I like Abby.
Mm-hmm. I learned pretty quick why she'd never invited me over before. At about 4 a.m, ooh, this is really creepy. At about 4 a.m, I woke up to the sound of a blood-curdling scream.
Oh, no.
I was still half drunk and almost fell out of bed, reaching for the light. When I finally got it on, Sarah was still asleep. I shook her awake and asked her if she'd been having a nightmare. I told her about the scream. That's when she got this really strange look on her face. She looked crestfallen, as if I'd just given her some really bad news. All she said was, "Not again." Then she turned over and went back to sleep. We didn't talk about it the next day. A few weeks later, I spent the night again. This time it was for similar reasons. It was the middle of winter and we'd caught a late movie. By the time it let out, the streets were snowed over, and so we trudged back to her place for the night. We walked in to find her place a wreck. There were pieces of furniture knocked over, and her belongings were scattered all over the place. But there was no sign that anyone had broken in. I picked up her phone to call the cops, but she stopped me, saying, "It's nothing." Then she said something that chilled me to the bone. "It happens sometimes. It's not a big deal."
What?
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I tried to get her to tell me what she was talking about, but she said she had a splitting headache and all she wanted to do was go to sleep, so we did. I don't remember what time it was when I woke up, but it was still pitch black outside. There was a weird sound coming from Sarah's lips. She sounded like she was gasping. I reached out and flipped on the bedside lamp. That's when I saw that Sarah was levitating above the bed. I mean, that's the point where you just grab your shoes and you run.
Whoa.
Bye-bye.
Levitating above the bed?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Sarah, what did you eat?
Man, I can't say with any certainty how high off the bed she was, but there was no mistaking it. She was wide awake with a look of abject terror on her face. She had her hands clutched together in front of her chest and her legs were pointed straight out. She didn't just hang there motionless. Her body seemed to be twitching as if she were having some sort of a mild seizure. I said her name. She didn't respond. I sat up on my knees and looked into her eyes, but they were glassy and looked right through me. Not knowing what to do, I just sat there watching her. Ugh. I don't know how you could just sit there watching that. I thought about what to do if it didn't stop. Call 911 and tell them what? Just as the insanity of the situation was starting to dawn on me, she began to descend again. Ew. Not slowly, but in quick little spasmodic increments until she was resting flat on her back on the bed again. Her eyelids closed and the gasping stopped. In a minute, she was breathing normally again. I didn't try to wake her. I thought doing so might cause whatever it was to start back up, and I pretty much decided then and there that I never wanted to see anything like that again. I stayed awake all night and waited for the light to break. When it did, I quietly put my clothes back on and took off. Sara was still asleep when I left. We never went out again, and I never called her after that night. She never called me either. I ran into her a couple of times in the weeks that followed, once at a coffee shop and another time outside a bar. We said hi. It was cordial and awkward. Neither of us spoke about it. It was like a dark secret we wanted to avoid at all cost. Last I heard, Sara took a job transfer and moved out to the West Coast. I only hope whatever it was that was going on with her has somehow stopped. She was a nice person, just a little flighty for my taste. Get it?
Oh,
flighty.
Come on. Making fun of the poor girl who levitates in her sleep. Now, there's always
Anyway, just real quick. Thanks, Abby, for submitting your story. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But there is a kind of an unwritten, unspoken rule, or maybe off-spoken rule or exception that a lot of times the most beautiful girls in the world don't have boyfriends or girlfriends. They're just alone.
Mm-hmm. Because they levitate when they sleep.
Maybe, is it out of the question to think that maybe some people whose past you're unaware of at some point may have made a deal with somebody or something to achieve eternal beauty or eternal youth or wealth or riches? I mean,
let's not, editorialize poor Sarah's life. We don't know any of that. Maybe it's a hereditary thing.
That's what was creepy about the story, is that there was nothing implied that she's being possessed by the devil, which is every time you watch a movie, somebody levitates is because of the devil.
Right.
It's not because of anything that they've eaten or exercised a particular gift to do. It's always bad stuff. Maybe in this case, it was no, it couldn't have been a good thing.
Well, but also, she said they never spent the night at Sarah's apartment. And the only times that this happened is at Sarah's apartment. So maybe it was the apartment. They did come home and it was torn apart. So maybe she moved away and now she's living her best life, levitation free.
In that case, it's almost a sad story because they could have
been
happy.
Sad.
But if it wasn't for that apartment or wherever she lived. Anyway, that's a good story.
Yeah, that was good. Boston. That's my Boston accent.
Very well done.
Thank you. I'm probably going to get hate mail now from Bostonians. All right, Vince, do you have a story for us?
I actually do.
Let's hear it.
This, like the last story, was also submitted for February of this year, February 2023. Brand new story coming from Elmo P. in Kearney, Nebraska. And this is called Betsy the Seldom-Seen Ghost. And it goes a little something like this. When I was 16, I stayed a week with my aunt and uncle, Doreen and Ted. It was a cool old place in the country with 3 stories and an apple orchard. The house had been in the family for ages. One afternoon, during my stay, I came in from the back terrace where Doreen and I had been lounging, and I caught sight of someone crossing the hallway just ahead of me. I called out my uncle's name. "Hey, Ted." There was no response. I was halfway down the hall when it struck me that it couldn't have been Ted. He'd left for town earlier in the day to stock up on supplies, and he wouldn't be back for at least another hour. Thinking there was an intruder in the house, I ran back outside and I told Doreen. She didn't get up from her lawn chair. She just gave a little shrug and said, "No big deal." When I asked her if she was crazy, a small grin came across her face. "That wasn't an intruder," she said. "That was Betsy." I asked her who Betsy was. "She's just a girl who lives in the house," Doreen told me in a matter-of-fact tone. "We're actually not sure what her name is, but Betsy seems to fit." I said, What do you mean she lives in the house? Who is she? Doreen looked at me, and what she said next sent a chill up my spine. She's a ghost. I'd never known my aunt and uncle to be the types to buy into the supernatural, which is what made her words all the more frightening. She told me they saw her frequently, usually just out of the corner of their eyes, and that she rarely caused any trouble. Occasionally things would get moved around the house, but nothing serious. No missing keys or windows thrown open in the dead of night or creepy-ass red rum warnings and lipstick on the bathroom mirror. Let's hope not. This ain't the Stanley Hotel. This is Kearney, Nebraska. Anyway, Betsy, as far as they knew, was harmless. Docile was the word my aunt used, but there was something about that description that didn't exactly ease my nerves, probably because it's a word I typically associate with animals, not people, or their ghosts for that matter. My next encounter with Betsy cemented my suspicion that not all was as hunky-dory as Doreen had tried to make it seem. It was late, and I was just settling into bed when the knocking sounds began. Oh no. Not the knocking sounds. Knocking sounds, even at a door.
No.
Knocking at the door. In the middle of the night, it's bad. Even in the day, it's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that? Mm-hmm. Anyway, they started as small, nearly inaudible taps coming from the wall of my room. I might have thought it was Doreen or Ted messing with me if there was anything on the other side of the wall, but the room was situated on an outer wall of the third floor of the house. Within seconds, the tapping had developed into a loud, steady, rhythmic knocking that seemed to come from everywhere at once. That was enough for me, and it would have been enough for me too. Mm-hmm. I jumped to my feet and started moving for the door, but something I saw in my periphery stopped me. Someone was standing in the corner of the room between the bed and the closet.
That's not where someone should be standing. In
the dim moonlight coming in through the window, it looked like the outline of a girl with long hair to her shoulders. I couldn't make out... This is creeping me out.
Well, and you're sitting right next to an open closet. Which...
Don't talk about the open closet, please. I couldn't make out any more detail, and I didn't want to. I bolted through the door and went screaming down the hall.
Screaming?
The startled reaction of my aunt and uncle as I came flying into their bed would have been priceless if I'd been in the mood to laugh. I buried myself under the covers and refused to come out until morning.
Yeah.
That's a smart 16-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
Good going, Elmo. The following day, I was still such a nervous wreck about it that I decided to leave for home early. Doreen and Ted were apologetic. They told me nothing that severe had ever happened before. I had no reason to believe they weren't telling the truth. According to them, the spirit of a girl in her teens had been seen in the house for more than 60 years. But there was no record of anyone matching Betsy's description ever having lived there in the past. That's weird. Needless to say, I've never gone back. Every so often, when we talk on the phone, I'll ask them how Betsy's doing. They always laugh and tell me she's behaving herself. I'll take their word for it. Yeah, and take their word for it, you should. Man, that was a good story. Mm-hmm. Elmo P. in Kearney, Nebraska. Betsy the Seldom-Seen Ghost submitted this month, February 2023.
Seldom seen, but man, when she is seen, she makes an impact.
What seldom seen to Doreen and was it Ted? Mm-hmm. Doreen and Ted? Mm-hmm. But to Elmo over here, he sees her every damn time he goes over there. So, wow.
Yeah, I always freak myself out in the middle of the night, when you have to get up, that I'm going to see like a shadow of a person like tucked into a little shadowy corner in the hall or in the bedroom. And that image of her standing, but between between the bed and the dresser, just standing there. I'm like, that's where I would die. My soul would just exit my body.
Well, the fact is we live in a house. I mean, all joking aside, we live in the castle, but we do live in a house that is almost, 70 years old?
Mm-hmm. Almost.
And so many people have lived here that I'm surprised we haven't seen our own Betsy. But maybe there's still time. Maybe there's some people, for example, maybe Elmo is a little bit psychic and he's the one who can actually see dead people, to quote a famous line. And maybe Doreen and Ted over there are not so psychically attuned and see or hear her only occasionally.
Yeah. Or maybe she liked Elmo
Well,
And he just freaked out.
maybe they were.
She didn't mean to scare him.
They were of the same age. I mean, if you're a ghost, how do you approach a living person and say, "Hey,
Want to go to the sock hop?
you want to go around the house because that's I can't leave. Do you want to go around? Or even, do you want to? May I communicate with you? I need to communicate something to the living, and
Right.
you're my age, and we're in tune." And then the person runs screaming out of the room.
That's gotta hurt. Elmo, why are you being hurtful?
Elmo, I don't know if your aunt and uncle still live there. I don't know how long ago this happened, but maybe you should take a trip back sometime. I don't know, maybe bring a Ouija board?
I mean, I'm not against the idea, but I know a lot of people are.
Anyway, I Elmo, if you are listening out there, please contact us and let us know if your aunt and uncle have reported anything else, or if you ever did go back. I'd be very interested.
Well, the story said that he never went back.
I guess this is a new story.
Yeah.
So, well, when you hear this in the future, put a pin in it and come
25
back
years from now, Elmo, we're going to request an update. So just be ready for that.
Right. And that brings us to our third and final story, read by the lovely Jane. What have you for us, Jane?
Don't do the weird radio announcer voice. It's so weird. All right. So my final story is called Ouija Board Smoke. And this is submitted by Brady in Virginia Beach, Virginia, February 2023. So another
all three brand new stories.
Brandly new story, as my grandma would have said. Brandly new. I'm writing this after hearing the Ouija board episode to share my own experience. It was back when I was in high school, around 2005 or 2006, and me and my neighborhood buddies got a hold of a Ouija board. I'm aware now that they are sold commonly, but back then it was kind of big to us. We used it a few times in my bedroom, minimal results, with one night me being a, quote, jerk, how Jane stated in the podcast episode, and moving it in a way that we were talking to a dead relative. So he's talking about how I said something about, being the jerk of the group and pushing the planchette.
Right.
So,
and that was in podcast episode number,
I don't know, the Ouija board episode. Anyways, one night we decided to take it up a notch and we walked with a group of friends. There was probably 7 of us total, but only 3 of us commonly did the spooky stuff. Down a trail that passed you guessed it, a cemetery.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
No.
The other 4, who wanted nothing to do with it, hung out on the trail. The 3 of us spook hunters walked in, found a flat spot among the headstones, and set up.
I'd be one of the ones hanging back by the...
What chicken? I'd be in the cemetery.
Actually, come to think of it, I probably feel safer with a Ouija board between me and the unknown than just an empty trail and God knows what could be Bigfoot. And go on. I'm sorry.
Now, mind you, this was an older, lesser-known cemetery, so it was especially spooky at night. We had 3 candles lit on the sides of the board. We sat in a 3-person circle and started asking away. Long story short, we did not get any activity doing the Ouija board. However, one of my friends was angry and decided to take the candle and set the corner of the board on fire. I mean, now you're just instigating. Not you, Brady, obviously, but your pal is an instigator. What we heard next, I can still remember in my head. The sound of a woman screaming from the wooded area around us. We immediately ran back to the group of friends that had waited for us, who assured us that they not only did not do the scream, but they also didn't hear it.
Oh, what?
Yeah, they didn't even hear it, due to the fact that the scream came from the opposite side of the woods that the trail was on. Yeah, but still, you'd think that they would have heard that.
I'm thinking Banshee. Again, I could go back to Bigfoot,
right?
Sasquatch scream again. Were they filming an episode of Finding Bigfoot anywhere nearby? Maybe Cliff let out a screech.
Doing his whoop. We all walked back home as normal, but once we got back to my buddy's house, it was brought up again. So we decided to look up such instances, and we found information that sent chills up our backs. I do not remember the website, but essentially, if you set fire to the board during a session, it could anger nearby spirits/demons, and a scream will be heard. All those who hear the scream have 72 hours to live. Safe to say we all lived, but talk about being spooked.
Any nearby spirits or demons?
Yeah, and they were in a cemetery, so I mean,
okay.
they're lucky it was just the one scream.
I was going to say, are there always nearby spirits and demons?
I would think
Maybe
so. I mean,
presumably,
they say that you're always at any time no farther away from a spider than like 3 feet. So I would imagine that it's probably a similar thing with ghosts, maybe or demons. What if you believe in that? Then maybe give them 10 feet. Just for you're never farther away from a spirit, an entity than 10 feet. So,
wow.
Anyway, yeah, I'll have to Google that. I didn't read anything when I was researching the Ouija board episode about setting fire to the board during a session, but I'll have to Google that and see what I find, and maybe I'll update you guys on that at a later time.
That sounds like some Hollywood stuff, setting fire to the board and it comes back with a vengeance.
It happened to Brady. So unless Brady is in Hollywood.
And it can happen to you too.
And Hollywood's in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
And it's not. So here ended
I've
the
looked at the map
lesson.
before. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is all of the stories that we have for you fine folks today. If you need more, and we know that you do, you can head over to castleofspirits.com and check out our story archives. You can also check out the podcast archive if you're just now being introduced to us. Hello. We also have our podcast available on YouTube, as well as all of the podcast platforms. And on YouTube, we've got cool little creepy looping videos in the background just to set some mood for you. And Vince, do you have anything else you'd like to say to the fine folks today?
Do check back with us in a number of days next week for another episode of Castle of Spirits podcast, where we will be talking about something cool.
Something cool. We are still, we have a couple of topics we're sussing out right now.
Yeah, but we want to surprise them, so
That's
we're not
right.
going to let them know. The only thing I can tell you is that it has to do with the paranormal.
Yeah, it will be spooky.
That's true.
All right, friends, have a beautiful weekend, and we will scare you later.
Scare you later.
No, cut that out.